Autotrophic and heterotrophic organisms. Every organism needs energy to survive, and this energy comes from its food. While every organism uses food for energy, different types of organisms get the nutrition they need in very different ways. Some organisms absorb food from their surroundings. Some organisms kill and eat other living things for food. And there are even organisms that can make their own food. Organisms that can make their own food are called autotrophic organisms. Autotrophic organisms usually make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, organisms absorb energy from the sun and convert it to sugars and other forms of food. Plants are autotrophic organisms that make their own food through photosynthesis. There are also types of protists and bacteria that can make their own food using photosynthesis. Because autotrophic organisms make food, they act as the producers in every ecosystem's food web. Heterotrophic organisms cannot make their own food and must consume other organisms for energy. Because heterotrophic organisms consume food, they are often called consumers. All animals and fungi are considered heterotrophic organisms, but these two types of organisms get their food in different ways. Animals ingest their food, which means they swallow other organisms. Humans are animals that ingest plants and other animals, or meat. Fungi release chemicals that break down the tissues of other organisms. Once these tissues have been broken down, the fungi absorb the nutrients for food. Many fungi are decomposers that break down dead plants and animals so they can absorb the nutrients for themselves. There are also heterotrophic protists, bacteria, and archaea that get their energy from other organisms. Motility. Some organisms are able to move around their environment while others spend their entire lives in the exact same location. Motility is the ability of organisms to move on their own. Animals are the most highly motile organisms, and they are the only organisms capable of traveling very long distances on their own. There are many forms of locomotion used in the animal kingdom, including walking, swimming, and flying. Organisms that can be seen moving in these ways are easily identified as animals. Many single-celled organisms are capable of moving much smaller distances. Even though these tiny organisms cannot travel the long distances that animals do, they are still considered motile since they can move themselves. Unicellular organisms are usually motile as the result of having either flagella or cilia. A flagellum looks like a long tail coming out of the cell, and it helps to move the cell forward. Cilia look like tiny hairs that cover the cell. Cilia move back and forth together to push the cell along. There are bacteria, archaea, and protists that are motile because they possess flagella or cilia. Organisms that are immotile cannot move themselves. Plants and fungi are immotile organisms that cannot move around like animals. For example, trees and mushrooms cannot move across a forest on their own. There are also many forms of immotile bacteria, archaea, and protists which lack flagella or cilia and cannot move themselves.